Hi guys, welcome back to Elizabeth Ann Reads. I'm Ann. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to kind of compare and contrast two different books that I've read recently. So it's not kind of a review, but also just kind of talking about the two books together. So let's get into that. The two books I want to talk about today are The Prophet Calls by Melanie Sumrow. I did talk about this a little bit in a wrap-up, so you may have heard some information about it already. And then the other one is My Life with the Liars by Kayla Carter. And the reason I'm using these two is because they're both middle grade books about cults. Now, I picked up this book a couple months ago. Chantel from An Intentional Life had been talking about this one, and so I picked it up. This one I picked up quite a while ago from Book Outlet. It was just kind of a cover buy to fill out my order, so I had free shipping. And I don't think I had any idea it was about cults at the time I bought it, or at the time I picked it up. So I read this one for middle grade March, and I ended up picking up this one just a couple weeks later because it met a prompt for a challenge I was doing. It was the only book I had on my shelf that met that prompt. So I figured it was middle grade, it'd be a quick read, and I went and picked it up. I am so glad that I read these two books kind of back to back. They ended up complementing each other really, really well. And we're just going to talk a little bit about why that is, what their similarities are, and what their differences are. I do want to say these are technically both middle grade books. I would not necessarily put these in the hands of just any middle grader because of some of the topics. And yeah, I think slightly older teens would find them more interesting. But that obviously is up to your discretion as a parent if you're wondering about giving them to your kids. But I would read them first, probably. If for no other reason than to have, better discussions with your kids about them. So both of these books focus on 12-year-old girls. In this one, we have Gentry, who, like I said, is 12. And in this case, the cult is a very, it's a kind of extremist, polygamist cult. So it's very conservative. The women all wear dresses, very family-oriented. Gentry's family, her father has 3 wives, so she has a lot of siblings, I think like 20 siblings. And so that's kind of the setting for this one. And then this one, My Life with the Liars, we follow Xylin, who is also 12. But this cult is kind of the opposite. I would call it more like a New Age type thing. It's all about being in the light and being part of the light and Mother God. And, there's no family unit. Everything is just all community. You have adults, children, no like parent-child relationships. And you have nothing is yours. Everything comes from Mother God and everything belongs to Mother God. So there is no mine, this is my toy or my bed or, my food. It's all just the collective. So two very, very different backgrounds to begin with. In both of these stories, the girls have been raised in the cult. It's all they've known. It's how they've grown up. One thing I really appreciated was kind of the different timelines for the two books. So this book, like I said, this one I read first. So in this book, we follow Gentry, who is, like I said, 12. She is a musician. She plays the violin. She's very, very passionate about that. But things start to change within their community. And rules are constantly changing. The prophet keeps kind of changing what the expectations are. And eventually it comes to the point where music or instruments are not allowed. And so Gentry is struggling with what the rules are, what the expectations are, and what she wants out of life, but she's also very fearful about not being one of the chosen. So kind of that inner struggle with that. And this whole story takes place within the cult. I'm not going to tell you the ending, but more or less the entire story takes place during her time in the cult. And that's the one thing that I wanted more of out of this book was I wanted kind of the aftermath. I wanted the story of what happens after. And I didn't get that in this book, and that's fine. That's not what the book was designed to do. But when I picked up this one, I got really excited because I realized this is exactly what the other book wasn't, in that this book picks up on the day that Xylin is removed from the cult. She does not choose to leave. She is taken out of the cult. And so it follows the 10 days after that and kind of her experiences going into what we would consider normal life, the real world, and what she knows, what she's been taught, and how she handles those things. That was one thing I thought was really interesting in both books, is their views of outsiders, what they had been taught about the outsiders. In this one, they're taught outsiders are bad and have no respect for them as a community, that basically that we train our dogs to attack them, that we just don't want anything to do with them. Kind of a similar idea here, not exactly the same, but the idea of those within the community are in the light and those outside are in the darkness. They are all liars. That's why it's called My Life with the Liars. Everyone outside the community is a liar, and they are in eternal torment, basically. Another thing I thought that was pretty interesting to contrast between the two is the treatment of women in general. This, again, very conservative. You get to the point in the book where women are not even allowed to leave the commune. They stay there. It's not safe for them to go out in the world. Whereas in this book, you have the exact opposite of the women are the only ones that leave, and they come back and leave and come back, because it's their job to go out and recruit new members, basically, to bring in new members to the community. Only the women can do that. So everyone else stays on the property. So that was interesting. But also the mother figures in these books, so in this case, Gentry's mother, I was so frustrated with, because I wanted so much more from her. I wanted her to stand up for her children and to stand up for herself and to speak out, which of course she doesn't do, because that's not what they do in this community. And in this one, you have a stepmother, basically, figure who is just an incredible image of what a mother should be. And she is so gentle and patient with Xylan and these things that Xylan doesn't understand, even really basic things. And the mother in here is just so loving and kind and explains just these simple things in such a gentle way, and is so just so there for what Xylan needs. And I really, really loved kind of that representation of the mother in this book. I thought that was really, really good. The other thing that I thought was really interesting, just contrasting the two books, is this book is pretty action-based. You know, these things happen, these are the results, and that's your story. This one is very kind of philosophical. You're very much in Xylan's head for the majority of the book. And that was really interesting, just her thought processes as she deals with life outside of the light, or life in the darkness with the liars. And her thought process is, she says, is this really true? Are these people lying to me? Are they, if this is true, why wasn't this being taught, in our, inside, in the light? Why were we taught this when this is not the case? And just her own kind of mental struggle with what she knows, what she's been taught, and what reality is, but still always questioning that reality because she's been taught that everyone is a liar. And so, again, action-based, very thought-based, and just very philosophical in really interesting ways, and some really interesting points brought up about good and where good comes from. And yeah, just really, really interesting to kind of compare and contrast these two, I thought. I would recommend, if you reading them, maybe not necessarily one right after the other, but in close connection with each other. Just because I think both of them did things really well, but what I wanted more from this book, I got in this book. And I think they complement each other really, really nicely. This reading these makes me want to learn more about different types of cults. I found it so interesting that just their internal struggles, both of them, with being so fearful of the outside world and so fearful of not being one of the chosen or not being in the light. And it's not even about that's where they want to be. It is sometimes, but it's more about being afraid of what's outside of that, being afraid of not being there. Just very, very fear-based in both cases. And I thought that was interesting. It makes me want to read more, learn more, explore that a little more. Not that I want to join a cult. I appreciate just the thought that goes into these things and people's struggles with how they've been raised and what they've been taught, and coming into your own as you get closer to adulthood and trying to figure out what you actually believe and why it's important, and just that idea of a life based in fear and not in truth. Anyway, that's about all I have to say, but I do recommend both of these. I thought they were both just very thoughtful and interesting, and yeah, it makes me want to explore this more. So that is it. Let me know down below if you have other books that you think would be similar to these, books about cults or just this idea of kind of a closed community. I'm really curious to kind of read more, and I like the thought processes the characters go through. But that is it. Thank you for watching.